I've worked and lived in central Victoria amongst the box-ironbark forests for much of my life and much of my adult life and pretty much all of my professional life. I've seen how widespread the damage and impact is, and I know also as an ecologist the kind of things that we should be doing. We know what to do basically, but we're just not doing it, and that saddens me. Most people think that bushland on public land is somehow intact or natural, and in some respects, in many respects it is, but people don't really appreciate just how disturbed humans, or how disturbed they are as a result of human impact.
Less than 1% of the old growth box-ironbark forests remain in Victoria. These forests can no longer provide the nectar that swift parrots need to sustain them through the winter months. Most of the understory plants have gone, and the ecosystem is so damaged that it cannot recover without active restoration interventions. The damaged soils are no longer porous enough to absorb rainfall, so less water is available to the landscape and its food webs. On top of that, they are now facing impacts of less rainfall and higher temperatures from climate change.
The way things are currently going now, it's quite possible, quite likely that swift parrots will go extinct in our lifetime if we don't intervene in targeted and smart ways. The swift parrots are currently, well, they're an extraordinary species. They nest and breed in Tasmania and then fly over the Bass Strait to the mainland every year, and they frequent this bush here and they feed on the nectar and they roost in the trees, especially large old trees are important, but healthy bushland is really important as well. And unless we can maintain that habitat and improve it over time, the chances of that species surviving is quite low. So we really do need to urgently act. The Spring Plains site is typical of box-ironbark forests in this region. The Heathcote area was the scene of a very intense gold rush in the 1850s, just like Bendigo and Ballarat and Castlemaine and so on. And there were huge numbers of people here, and they just completely flattened the place and dug it up and caused a lot of damage. And what we see today is the recovery post that disturbance, and then on top of that, timber harvesting and so on. And so as a result, it's very damaged. The understory, the soil, the tree canopy, the shrub layer have all been really badly knocked around, and it really isn't in a particularly good state. It's quite dysfunctional, it's quite degraded in the scheme of things, and it could be so much better if we intervene. If you do look around, you do find areas that are less modified, and those areas are often quite diverse. They have large trees, they're in particularly good condition, and they represent a kind of living benchmark, a bit of a representation of what we think the system used to be like. And those areas are really important for comparing to more degraded sites to figure out how modified they are and also how to fix them.
These areas have a very high cover of diverse assemblage of indigenous plants that reflects better wildlife habitat and relatively good soil condition, capable of absorbing and using rainfall for local productivity and food webs, instead of quickly flashing off down gully drainage lines and creeks, as is now endemic in the widespread degraded scenario seen here. The Spring Plains Watershed Repair Project will demonstrate the application of a combination of practical and innovative ecological restoration techniques to a 138 hectare catchment. The aim is to reset the altered forest so that it can recover ecological health and better withstand the impacts of climate change.
These kind of restoration projects, what we call landscape restoration projects, are not really practiced on any kind of scale. And what I mean there is that they might be done at a small level, with small plots and in small areas or in particular properties or reserves or parts of them, but not across bigger landscapes. And the thing that's different about this project is we're intending to try and treat this whole micro-catchment. And so it's a very good way of thinking about the way ecosystems landscapes are organised is based on watersheds. And so if we're going to do something in that system, we'll treat the whole watershed and we'll get a full benefit in that whole landscape. And no one's doing that at the moment, and we'd like to put this on the table as being something that people should be considering as part of their normal restoration and land care and conservation work.
The groundbreaking Spring Plains Watershed Repair Project will be a catalyst for other projects across Victoria, as its ecological restoration plan can be replicated and rolled out in other catchment areas with similar leaky landscapes.
If you felt that these areas of bush are lacking something, it's probably because they are, and they do need to be managed better in order for them to be more diverse and more healthy for the species that we still have left. This kind of intervention is going to make a big difference, and hopefully it will then be taken up by others more broadly across the landscape, because unless we do this, we're really in strife. The urgency cannot be overstated. So I'd really like you to extend a welcome to join us if you're interested in this sort of stuff and support us financially, because we can't do it without your help.